Hey guys, time for a new segment or show, depending on how you want to look at it. I'm going to call it 90 Plus. And what it is, it's kind of, I was talking about doing game reviews of stuff that's been out. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm not going to guarantee it's going to be spoiler free. And the game has to have been out for at least 3 months. That's why I'm calling it 90 Plus. As promised, the first one is Killzone Shadow Fall. So let's get started. This was a launch title for the PS4. And it wasn't something that I had really high expectations for from my perspective, in as much as I'm more of a Battlefield guy. I enjoyed the Killzone series. I got into it late, so I didn't have a real big investment with the story, although I was aware of where it had been before. The game looked great, there was no question about that, but for my money, I felt there are other games that I'm more interested in. I will eventually get it. And I probably bought the game, I think it was at the first week of December, second week of December. At launch, I'd bought Battlefield 4, Need for Speed Rivals, and I don't remember what the other game was. Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag. And it just got to a point where I was ready for something else, so Killzone kind of fit the bill. I was able to track down a used copy, that early in the cycle was kind of cool. So I got it inexpensive, and I played it. A lot of people have complained about the campaign being... I mean, you hear various complaints, like, the story's not right, it's too long, or it's too short, it's repetitive. I don't get that way. The only complaints I really had about the campaign were that there were some missions that were very Horde-like. It was way too many waves of characters and then rinse repeat kind of thing. So that was an issue. I didn't like that, especially towards the end of the game. I think the story, while very predictable, was good, and I liked the ending mission that they had. I'm not going to spoil the last two missions for the simple fact that I bet you there's a fair percentage of my subscribers that started the campaign like, moved on to something else, and they're going to come back to it. I'm one of those guys. I tend to come back to campaigns and stuff, and I avoid spoilers like crazy. So I'm not going to spoil the ending, but if you've played it, I mean, you obviously know what's there, and I think that was pretty cool. And it also left the games wide open for later games, and by wide open, I mean that there's a bunch of different directions that they could go in. And I think that was a smart move on Guerrilla's part. So the campaign was fun. It was a very different way to play the game. It broke out of the very typical shooter stuff, like having the owl and things like that. Those abilities really, definitely set the stage for a different sort of gameplay. And it also, on top of being beautiful graphically, also took great advantage of the controls, like the touchpad for the owl and stuff like that. Loved it. So definitely was the first game I'd played for PS4 that felt like it was made for PS4, so that was good on you, Guerrilla. You did a good job. And then I kind of hesitated to start the multiplayer, and then one night, a bunch of my buddies were having a few drinks in party chat, and they're like, "Come on, Jimmy, let's do some Killzone." Okay. Start playing it, and I was just sucking at it. I wasn't getting anywhere. I was like, "Ugh." But then I played it the next day, and I was blown away. I said, "Oh, this is great." And some people complain that it's 4-on-4 and it's small scale stuff, but that's the reason I like it. If I want a big, massive, crazy battle, I'm going to go to Battlefield, and that's what it's for. Not every online shooter has to be huge. When people were complaining about Titanfall, I was like, shut up. How many big fucking mechs do you need on this screen at one time? 6 versus 6 is plenty. So with Killzone, it was the same thing for me. I liked the idea that it could be faster paced, but it didn't have to be. You could also use more strategy because there's less people and so forth. And because there's only 4 adversaries, you can kind of learn their patterns easier over the course of a longer match. And, depending upon the mood you're in, it is a different game. If every shooter game had the exact same mechanics and just different skins, What's the point of that? So if I want to play Battlefield, I'm going to play Battlefield. If I want to play something that reminds me a little bit of Gears of War, a little bit of Halo, and yet is something altogether different, I'm going to go with Killzone. That's it. You know, whereas something like Blacklight Retribution is, it's not unique, but it's unique to itself. It's a very simple shooter, but the mechanics are a little bit different, and the way in which you do things is different. So, more on that another time. Maybe next week, I don't know. But overall, Killzone was a very solid game. And I've seen launch titles for the PS1, the PS2, Xbox, the Xbox 360, where shooters just sucked. When that, like one of the first launch titles or whatever, like the good shooter for the original PlayStation when it came out, or shortly after it came out, I should say, was Doom. And that game was already 5 years old at that point. 5, 6 years old. So, well, 4 or 5 years old, sorry. I think getting my years mixed up. And then you had, like, PS2, there's... None of the good shooters came out for it right away. It was a little bit into its life cycle. Although Agent Under Fire was quite good. It was, like, a good clone of GoldenEye, basically. And then... you know, PS3, Xbox 360 era, we're looking at, like, I said, Perfect Dark Zero. What the fuck? Ugh, it was horrible. So, you know, and then, of course, you got Halo that came out for Xbox, but it took a while for that to catch on because the console itself hadn't caught on. So, essentially, when you look at the pedigree of launch window for first-person shooters, you know, especially when they're exclusive to the console, they don't have a great track record. So the fact that Shadow Fall here was able to deliver, very cool. I thought, again, the story was solid, if not groundbreaking. It definitely, the way the story was told, it definitely facilitates a longer game in as much as it justifies all these varied environments and things that you were doing, which that series sorely needed. So that's definitely awesome. The multiplayer delivers on what it promises, something a little bit different yet familiar and fun. I just played some this morning to really familiarize myself with the game, and that's one thing I love about it, is because of the nature of the game and they're not terribly long, I can sit down, play one match, and quit and not feel like I'm missing something. You know, if I want to play a game of Killzone, I'm going to play a game of Killzone. Where with Battlefield, it's almost like you've got to have an hour to 2 hours set aside. Which, there's nothing wrong with that. I love Battlefield, okay? But I like the idea that with Killzone, I can sit down, play it, put it down, and do something else. Like watch a James Bond documentary. So, great game. I hesitate to do a points-based system, but you guys on other things have asked me to do points-based systems, so I will. What I decided I'm going to do is, it's a 10-point system, very simple, no 9-point whatever the hell, nothing like that. So just, you know, whole numbers. So this one, I would say, is a solid 8 out of 10. And the reason that it's lacking, you know, that extra little bit is two things. One, the multiplayer runs at full 1080p and 60 frames per second, and I noticed a huge difference versus the 30 frames in the campaign. As I've said in other videos, I'm not really a huge guy when it comes to frames per second. Like, I don't care. But seeing the difference it made in this game, I would have liked to have seen the campaign reflected that way as well. I don't know why that was the case, but, you know, mildly disappointing. But the big one for me was just basically the gameplay in the campaign towards the end got not necessarily repetitive, but it kind of dragged on as time went on. It's not perfect. It's very, very good. So if you haven't played it, pick it up, rent it, Killzone Shadow Fall for the PlayStation 4. What I'm probably going to do is do one of these probably twice a week. So I figure Mondays are going to be, you know, I think Mondays will be disc-based games, and I don't know what day of the week I'm going to do, maybe Wednesday or Thursday. And I think those will be PSN or free-to-play titles. And we'll just kind of rotate that way until we run out of games, which hopefully we never will. But what do you think? What did you think of Killzone Shadow Fall? Tell me in the bottom. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Like this bad boy. Get the word out there. I'm not here to say whether or not you should agree with me. It's a discussion. We're here to talk about it. It's been 90 plus days, so let's see what happens. Thanks for watching. Love you guys. Keep on grinding.